Why we provide different internet solutions for your different needs. SLT Fiber, 4G and ADSL. SLT Broadband, just the way you want it.
Cloaks and daggers, the opposition leader delivers a truculent statement on the draft constitution. COPA chief, UPFA MP Lasantha Alagiyawanna reappointed as the chairman of the Committee on Public Accounts. Targeting the wallet, fines and serious traffic-related offences to be increased. Choke or meltdown, Serena Williams blows a 5-1 lead in the decider to be knocked out of the Australian Open. All this and more tonight on First at 9, this Wednesday, the 23rd of January 2019.
Smart Android තාක්ෂණයෙන් එන Singer Vista TV එකක් මිලදී ගන්නා ඔබට හිත පිරෙන්න වාසි රැසක් ඕනෑම Singer ප්‍රදර්ශනාගාරයකින්.
From Derana, this is Derana First at 9 with Ndivari Amuwata and Mahesh Jani. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
And a very good evening and welcome to First at 9 right here on Derana 24. Good evening, Indivari.
Good evening, Mahesh.
Lots of stories to report to you, to our viewers tonight as well. Yesterday we got quite a response with regard to the interview which we made with parliamentarian Sumanthiran
on the constitution.
Yes.
And I think what's interesting about it is that tonight we also have a statement from the opposition leader Mahinda Rajapaksa. Some of the allegations that MP Sumanthiran discussed about yesterday and responded to are also addressed today in the statement, especially on police powers.
Indeed, this debate continuously keeps happening, and we will definitely bring all the aspects of that story to you as and when we get them. But let's move on with the stories we have for our viewers tonight.
Right. Tonight's top story, newly appointed district leaders of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party received their letters of appointment yesterday. The new appointments were granted under the restructuring plan of the party, and the letters were presented by Chairman of SLFP, President Maithripala Sirisena.
The President has also instructed the new district leaders on the forthcoming restructuring process.
President Maithripala Sirisena awarded letters of appointment at the Presidential Secretariat yesterday to new district leaders of the SLFP. Accordingly, MP Sri De Silva is appointed the leader of Badula district, while MP SB Disanaka is appointed the leader of the Kandy district. Mahinda Amaravira is appointed the leader of the Hambantota district and Mahinda Samarasinghe for the Kaluthura district. Dasiri Jayasekara will head the Kurunegala district, while for the Anuradhapura district, the new leader will be Duminda Disanaka. For the Kegol district, Ranjit Siambalapete is appointed the leader, while Lasantha Alagiyawanna will lead the Gampha district. Meanwhile, Tilanga Sumantipala is appointed the leader of the Colombo district and Shan Vijayalal De Silva for the district of Galle.
The new constitution has never been the flavour of the current opposition, especially its leader Mahinda Rajapaksa. His views against the new document were aired by media, especially since a report was tabled at the last Constitutional Assembly, which the opposition leader called the draft constitution, despite the government insisting otherwise.
Now, the statement I was talking about earlier today,
Indeed.
He moved to release a strongly worded statement highlighting what he identifies as the clauses will weaken the parliament and immeasurably strengthen the provincial legislatures.
Opposition leader Mahinda Rajapaksa today released a statement to media criticising certain elements included in the report presented to the Constitutional Assembly recently. Calling the report the draft constitution, he said it seeks to weaken Parliament and immeasurably strengthen the provincial legislatures. Giving explanation to the remark, the opposition leader says that if Parliament is to enact a law on a matter on the Provincial Council's list without the express agreement of each and every Provincial Council, that law would have to be passed with a two-thirds majority by Parliament and also approved at a referendum. Moreover, he charges that the legislative power of Parliament is to be further weakened by giving the proposed Constitutional Court the power to review laws that have been passed by Parliament, and even though the draft constitution refers to a Provincial Council list, a concurrent list and a reserved list, it has not been stated anywhere whether these lists are the same as those in the present constitution or not. The opposition leader then focused on the power structure of provincial councils and says the federalist tilt in the proposed draft becomes obvious when the governor, the main representative of the central government in the provinces, is placed under the chief minister. Touching on the police, he says the police force will be broken up into a national police force and 9 separate provincial police forces, each with its own police commission. He revealed that the National Police Force is to have jurisdiction only over a limited number of specified offences, such as offences against the state, election offences and currency-related offences, while the provincial police will have effective charge of all day-to-day police work. The opposition leader cautioned that this country can be destroyed simply by breaking up the police force into 10 separate police forces in the manner proposed, and highlighted it as the very reason that no government in the past 30 years broke up the police force regardless of the provisions in the 13th Amendment. He also accused that under the new constitution, the central government cannot unilaterally acquire state land in a province even for a national security-related purpose, as the provincial council can petition the Constitutional Court against such an acquisition. The former president also warned that even the declaration of a state of emergency by the central government is to be made subject to judicial review by the Constitutional Court. Opposition leader Mahinda Rajapaksa also took aim at the United National Party, the TNA and the JVP, charging that they forfeited the trust of the people due to the manner in which they practiced dissimulation and deception in the lawmaking process, while highlighting the way the 19th Amendment was passed with dummy provisions inserted solely to mislead the public and the Supreme Court. In a statement full of cautions, the opposition leader highlighted that the status of Buddhism and the term unitary are used as a bargaining strategy by those mooting the new document in order to win the real federalist demands. Concluding his statement, the opposition leader says opposing the draft constitution put forward by the present government does not mean that the opposition are slamming the door shut on constitutional reform. He acknowledged that local communities need to be empowered to look after their own affairs within a certain national framework.
A popular allegation against the current government is the continued postponement of elections. Despite the government pointing to the lack of consensus on an electoral system as a sticking point, Janatha Vimukthi Peramuna alleges that there is another reason for the delay in polls. Addressing a conference titled Let's Read Lenin, the General Secretary of the party charged that the government's hesitation in holding polls is down to the fact that it simply doesn't profit those in power.
Holding elections is an important aspect of democracy. How does the affluent hold elections? They will hold them only if it is beneficial for them. Even during the time of Mahinda Rajapaksa, they always held provincial council elections since they were beneficial for them. It's not the case with the current government. Since elections are not beneficial for them, they're not holding any election. They ignore holding provincial council elections, stating there is a technical issue. They can resolve this technical issue if they want to, but why aren't they doing that? The leftist movement should fight against the affluent classes, trying to protect their power.
UPFA parliamentarian Vimal Veerawansa heralds a warning for the Muslim community of the country, urging them to be on alert for traces of terrorism. UPFA parliamentarian Vimal Veerawansa said this during a media briefing today. And it was also stated that Dalasalaha Peruma, speaking here, stressed that Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna will go to court requesting the provincial council elections be held under the old system.
We are trapped when it comes to elections. To hold elections under the old system, there should be a slight amendment to the constitution. It won't take more than a month or so for the process. We believe that provincial council elections can be held in all the provinces, and we are not against it. A member of the Election Commission went to court against the dissolution of Parliament about 2 months ago. Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna will seek a solution through courts in the next few days. We invite the Election Commission to stand up for the protection of people's right for elections without hesitation. The court has the other responsibility. We went to court against the postponement of elections before, and there were 8 petitioners, including myself. The court ordered the president that the elections cannot be postponed. Then the government, led by Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe, postponed elections, pointing to a technical issue.
Minister of Transport and Civil Aviation Arjuna Ranatunga says that the fines against the drivers who commit serious traffic offences claiming innocent lives on the road will be greatly increased. He emphasised that in addition to imposing fines, steps will be taken to impose necessary laws to terminate the relevant drivers' driving licences. Minister Ranatunga said that the necessary steps to implement these actions will be taken in the upcoming weeks. He noted the planned hike in traffic fines at a function held to compensate casualties of road accidents committed by unidentified vehicles.
UPFA parliamentarian Lanka has been reappointed as chairman of the Committee on Public Accounts. He was reportedly appointed to the position once again uncontested. His appointment comes at the heels of JVP MP Sunil Handunethi also being reappointed as chairman of the Committee on Public Enterprise.
Well, we thought of diverting your attention into a topic which usually goes under the radar, but one which commands much more attention. Now, in the women in Sri Lanka outnumbers the country's male population, and yet their proportionate representation in the field of journalism is baffling.
Well, with calls and measures to champion women's rights in modern-day Sri Lanka, the question is, what is keeping them away from this profession that we are all in? We found out that there are several reasons as to why women feel hesitant in entering the field of journalism, with harassment and pay being prominent deterrents. Female students who dream of what they will choose as a profession when they step into the society after their education often think of themselves as a teacher, a doctor, engineer, a businesswoman, banker, and the list goes on. How many of them, however, would see themselves as journalists? In the historical narrative of the world, the perspective of the woman almost non-existent, and that's very much the case with journalism as well. A study has shown that women journalists are more interested in reporting news with a human and social interest. In addition to that, why else is it important for women to be in journalism compared to any other profession?
Women being in the industry is very important. It encourages to challenge the general stereotypes about women, what they can do or what they cannot do, and also it supports to fair portrayal of gender in the media.
When it's come to male, there have been several platforms from historical days for them to come and voice their opinion, for them to tell their issues. But when it's come to female, it has been always lesser. So female journalists play an important role of the society for women to come and tell their opinion in social platforms. To reach that issues to the policy level, again, the journalists play an important role. So that's why we need more female journalists in the journalism field.
Today, however, journalism has become a field which is dominated by men, despite the obvious need to have more women involved in the profession. Anyway, women outnumber men at institutes of journalism and lecture rooms of human sciences. This is very much reflected in the number of students in the arts stream who qualified for undergraduate courses at higher educational institutes in Sri Lanka for the academic year 2016-2017. Out of the 9,418 candidates that year, a staggering 7,742 were women. Furthermore, at the College of Journalism, the majority in the yearly intake is also reported to be women. But how many of these women actually enter newsrooms in Sri Lanka? The current women population in Sri Lanka exceed men at 50.7%. So why are they not adequately represented in newsrooms across the country?
There is no policy in media sector on sexual harassments or bullying at the workplace. There is no proper childcare facilities, no flexible working hours. The industry is driven by the market. So women especially have to comply to the interest of the owners of the industry rather than the interest of the society or the country. That makes them more vulnerable in the media sector.
Equal opportunities and equal wages play a huge role in attracting female journalists into this field and keeping them in the field. What personally discouraged me to be in media is the salary, that I should admit, because journalists do not get paid as the corporate level jobs. Well, I think it is because of the social stigma attached to the female journalism. Female think that it is a 24/7 job. They can't do anything apart from that. Not true, because you still can have the work-life balance even though you are a female journalist.
If we set Sri Lanka aside, if you do a random search for women news reporters on social media, your search feed will be filled with responses such as sexiest female reporters, prettiest female anchors on TV, groping or kissing compilations. What are the implications of this on the perception of women journalists in society? What can be done to encourage more and more women to take up journalism? And another question is that, what will make it a safer and promising career for women?
Certain things that you have to address in the policy level, in regulation level, as well as there should be some provisions that media companies and owners has to take care of. There is an initiative currently in Sri Lanka to introduce a gender charter for Sri Lankan media, which addresses the gender portrayal in the media as well as the safety and security of women in the media sector.
What is needed, however, is not to stuff newsrooms with women journalists, but to ensure women are encouraged to make the choice on their own volition and put their knowledge and talents to good use in the media field. It will ultimately enable the society to hear the voice of women a bit more louder.
Quite eye-opening information there on that piece in Livery, and we at First and 9 should be proud about the fact that our team is, there's only 2 guys and the rest are all women, and it's headed by a lady as well.
Yes, certainly.
And with that, let's go for a short commercial break. We'll be right back.
You are watching Sri Lanka's #1 news channel. This is Other Derana 24.
Well, on to your business news now. State-run Sri Lankan Airlines had lost $135 million or 40 billion rupees, up from $66 million. That is about 11 billion rupees in the 9 months ending December 31st last year, amid a steep fall in the local currency. The national carrier said that Sri Lankan Airlines had also paid $23 million to the government as withholding tax on lease payments on aircraft. The government had already proposed a waiver of the tax. Interest cost for the 9 months were $47 million. The currency loss on forex loans were not separately given. Sri Lankan rupees fell. The Sri Lankan rupee, the currency, fell about 150 at the beginning of this last year to 180 to the US dollar by the end of 2018. Now, the national carrier said revenue from airline operations rose 8% to $746 million. The chairman of the Sri Lankan Airlines was quoted as saying that losses incurred by the national carrier came partly due to interest costs of old loans and excessively high lease rentals paid for overpriced aircraft.
Well, let's get more insight into that story and also other business stories as well. Joining us now right here on Studio 24 is Kenneth De Silva, who is a business analyst. Kenneth, welcome to Studio 24.
Pleasure to be here.
Right, I think Dr. Kenneth, this is a business cycle analyst.
That's correct.
When we talk about business, economy and Sri Lanka, we're talking about growth forecasts for 2019, although Sri Lanka's growth in 2018 is far below estimate and also far below potential.
Sure.
But this year, 4 and 5% between that, what are we really looking at?
Yeah, well, to be honest, the last year, I think the final year figure of GDP is still to be released by the Census and Statistics Department. But our estimation is that it will be not more than 3% for the whole year, which is alarming. I mean, as you rightly said, we have been below our potential growth, which is on average had been around 4.5%, even at the peak of the war. So we are at a really stressful point in the economy from many fronts. The three fronts that I would want to refer to going into 2019 is one being the real sector, where the economic activity takes place, then the banking sector, and we've got the external sector. Now these three combined are going to be extremely challenging, far more challenging than what we saw in 2018. To analyze 2019, we have to look at these three particular segments to kind of make some headway in 2019. 2019 is going to be, I think, in our estimates, will be nothing greater than 3.5 to 4, maximum 4.
But what's really holding this economy down? 3.5, like you said, during the war, this economy grew faster than 3.5%.
Couple of things. One is, I think many speakers who have come on this program have said the inconsistency in policy. I mean, that is one factor. The second factor is also the current economic model that we are following. There is a great flaw in this model because we have shifted it from an investment model to a consumption model, which is now kind of having its double effect on the economy. One, we are seeing the exchange rate slip because of this heavy reliance on external consumption. If you look at the numbers, it's staggering. Our numbers, imports are $20 billion. So there is a trade deficit of about $10 billion. I mean, that's huge. Our consumption imports have increased on a year-on-year basis by about 18%. Right? It's about $5 billion, our total consumer imports. I mean, consumer imports are sugar, rice, wheat, things like that. So it's huge. So the shift in the economic model is calling a slippage in the currency. That's bringing back the extra costs that we saw in Sri Lanka Airlines, referring to that particular loss. And also the state-owned entities have dollar borrowings on their balance sheet, while their rupee earnings don't complement that. So they are compressed. Their revenues are compressed because of the lack of price adjustments, and you can't adjust price in this particular environment. There is no way that the government can do that. It's how you manage the economy. So once again, it's the economic model that's at fault and not the business sector itself.
You just touched on the exchange rates and how it is affecting the economy right now. Now, it seems to be we are heading towards 200, past 200 for the US dollar somewhere around in April or something. So what can, in your point of view, the government right now could do to reverse this, or should we just let it slide?
Should the central bank intervene, do you think, at this stage?
Well, I mean, there are two parts to this question. One is the rupee exchange rate going to 200, I think it's a little bit over-exaggerated. I don't think it will immediately get there. But if things are not addressed, I definitely think that it will slip faster. In terms, I think it will get to 200. But in the short term, I think the government has already reined in a lot of imports. They brought in a lot of controls, particularly on the consumer import side. Then they are using moral persuasion. Then they're using intervention. We saw the central bank lose about $1.5 billion of reserves in the last 3 months. So that has come to a stop because our reserves are in bad condition. So to supplement that external reserve condition, we are gone now to the bond markets. The bond markets also not that great because of our credit rating being downgraded, and also our secondary market yields have rose to about 8%. So now that puts the government finances into a bit of a quandary.
Right, as we also talk about exports, the currency. Yes, the currency fall, the government says is good on our exporters, allowing our exporters to earn high dollars. But then what is the real impact on our exporters? Because we really haven't focused on an export-led economy, no manufacturing to reach our export targets. And just our provisional figures do show an increase. However, I think you as an analyst have pointed out at several occasions that these figures are actually largely diluted.
Yeah, I mean, the export story is not a great story. If you look at the bulk of our exports, in fact, almost 50% of our export revenue is coming from one particular product, which is apparel. I mean, it's sad to say that no other sector has stepped up to this export story that we have been talking about so many years.
Three main sectors, it has completely gone off.
It has gone up because, again, the lack of focus. So our exports, to get back to Indivari's question, why aren't we looking at exports and whether the exchange rates have helped? It's a myth. I mean, we are living in this mythical world where we think that the exchange rate devaluation is going to help bring us exports. Yes. That never happens. Globally, it has never happened. I mean, this is nonsense.
What's the real cost on the economy?
It's a huge cost because people don't realize there is an input cost factor that comes into play. Transport costs increase, input costs, raw material costs increase. Those are ultimately passed on to the exporters. I mean, exporters have to buy corrugated cartons, packing, printing material. None of these are produced in Sri Lanka.
Yes,
right? And the fundamental problem in this whole story is that we have got caught into this trap of this comparative advantage nonsense. It's utter rubbish. I've been saying this at many forums.
Right. I think that's all the time we have tonight. Thank you very much, Kenneth, for joining us on First at 9 and for sharing your insights with us.
Pleasure.
All right, let's move on with other business stories, or rather take you straight to the stock market right now. The all-share price index ended 0.1% firmer at 5,951.56 today, with a turnover of 202.5 million rupees, which is below last year's daily average of 834 million rupees. Foreign investors were net buyers for a second straight session, buying a net of 20.9 million rupees worth of shares. With that, we have Dimantha Matthews from First Capital Holdings with a detailed report.
Bond market saw foreign buying interest after a long lapse, primarily centered around the shorter tenors, while the billed auction saw the 1 years dipping by about 5 basis points to 10.7%, and our secondary market also adjusting accordingly.
Well, the Sri Lankan rupee closed slightly weaker today due to dollar demand from importers and state banks, while investors remain cautious over debt repayment by the government. The rupee ended at 183.88 cents against the US dollar. Here's a look at your foreign exchange rates today. And we'll return with you international news right after this short commercial break. Do stay with us.
You are watching Sri Lanka's #1 news channel. This is Derana 24.
International news now. Zimbabweans were jubilant when their near 4-decade rule under Robert Mugabe ended in November 2017. But last year, a poll suggested that a public consensus has materialized where they thought Mugabe's dictatorial rule was better than the hardships faced under the new regime. To add fuel to fire, Zimbabwe's Human Rights Commission yesterday accused the country's security forces of instigating systematic torture of residents following violent protests that erupted last week, sparked by a 150% hike in the price of fuel. The comments reinforced concerns that Zimbabwe is reverting to the authoritarian rule that characterized the regime of former leader Robert Mugabe, who was forced from power after a coup in November 2017 that ended nearly 4 decades of his rule. In his first public comment since cutting short a foreign trip, President Emmerson Mnangagwa said on Twitter that the violence by security forces was unacceptable and a betrayal of the new Zimbabwe. The latest unrest drove Mnangagwa at one time a close Mugabe aide to cancel an appearance at the World Economic Forum in Davos, where he has been expected to pitch for foreign investments and fly home.
Still in international news, Priyanka Gandhi, the sister of Congress party leader Rahul Gandhi, has formally joined politics with the general election in neighbouring India only months away. Gandhi has been appointed the party leader's secretary for the eastern part of the crucial state of Uttar Pradesh. She has campaigned extensively for her brother and mother, Sonia Gandhi, in earlier elections, but had refused a formal political role for herself. Analysts say she will infuse fresh energy into the Congress campaign. The main opposition Congress party was routed by Prime Minister Narendra Modi's Bharatiya Janata Party in the last general election in 2014 and has found it hard to recover. The party gained some ground in recent state elections but faces a tough challenge to beat the BJP and regain power. Well, before we sum up tonight's edition, I think very quickly 7 students from the Southeastern University have been arrested for posting photographs of themselves standing on the ruins of the ancient Kiralagala Stupa. Now, I think a reminder to all our viewers, when posting pictures and taking pictures as a tourist, exert utmost respect over our ancient archaeological sites and religious areas of interest. That's all we have tonight. I'm Leader Maithripalapala.
And I'm Maithripala. Have a good night.